Alright, call me over. How's everybody doing? First week or second week back. We are not going to be joined by the president and the provost today. They, at the last minute yesterday, notified me that, yes, it was all you. It's the Sister City celebration stuff that they have going on, so they're not going to be able to make it today. And we had a tight schedule anyway, so they figured we could reschedule. But with that, do we have any notes on the minutes? Of course, we did not have a video at our last meeting, so big thanks to Melissa for managing to cram all the knowledge that she did.
Thank you, Martha.
I did have an audio.
Oh, good.
Oh, you're smart.
That is really smart.
That is super
The
smart.
video is so much nicer to work with. You could just go slowly over things.
Okay.
For the audio, you have to keep.
We're rolling right now.
Yay.
So you want to?
So if there are no notes on the minutes, we'll take a motion.
I'll move to approve Carol's.
I don't know if you can do that before. Here, all right, so first from Lori, Carol second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from March 11th, please indicate so by raising your hand.
It's back.
Any opposed to approving the minutes? Any abstentions? Brian? All right, well with that, we're going to jump right into a report from Advisory Council.
Okay, so the easy things out of the way, the chair's elections are coming up, so look out for that. And then Senate seats, they're going to be up for election 2. The only funny thing going on is that traditionally, well, not funny, no, but normally a third of the people get replaced every year, and so there's a good rotation, and we have the old with the new and the middle people. And the way things are happening, there were a lot of new people last year, which is great. A lot of young people who are speaking up, and that's awesome, but only very few are going to be leaving next year. So we need to decide at some point whether we want to slow people down or fast forward some people so that we get back into that tier system.
So essentially, the Senate has 3 senators for each division plus 3 at large. I think, although it's not explicitly stated anywhere in the bylaws, my guess is that at some point the intention was a third of the Senate is always up for re-election or new election. And for some reason that's not how it's happening. The big chunk came forward last year and the small chunk this year. So in Advisory Council we discussed is whether or not we should do something to reset the wheel back to the pattern that we used to have, which of course would involve both a change to the bylaws, but probably some kind of resolution in which we either extend or a certain Senate terms, or ask people to step down early or run for re-election early. That's pretty much the only way we would be able to fix getting back onto that cycle. We think it'd be a good cycle in the future, so that we wanted to kind of bring that to Senate and see what other people thought about that. So any thoughts?
How soon do you want me to step down?
Take a volunteer.
Actually, you can be one of the extended.
Yeah.
We were hoping for enthusiasm.
I'll send you a postcard.
Where you cannot be reached.
So I just have one question. Where is it in our, like I should know this, but where is it in that about the composition of the Senate and how, you said you think it's in the bylaws, can you give me a clue?
No, I said it's not in the bylaw. In the
It's
bylaw,
not
the
at all.
bylaw says how many are from each place.
But they don't stipulate time
It doesn't
frame.
stipulate time frame.
Okay.
But my intuition tells me that's probably why, because that's what a lot of other institutions do. I've looked at the bylaws in other places, and that's how they rotate the
Okay.
elections.
And the US Senate.
It's working well.
We should use them.
So, speaking of open seats, the IFS has an open seat. I believe the person in the seat right now is happy to continue, but we were one, oh, she's stepping down. Cross that. We need volunteers, but I guess we need to vote on that. That thing that we don't do much, but we're supposed to do.
So we're gonna send out a call, for nominees to the full faculty. You do not have to be on Senate to be on interinstitutional faculty Senate, although you may be.
We talked also in the advisory council about the FPARs, and at this point, we're kind of encouraging people to discuss it further and perhaps gather some ideas. So maybe there would be some people who would like to create some kind of group and have a discussion about it.
What do you mean, discuss it further with whom?
I was trying to be as vague as I could.
I can't do vague, I know I can't do vague, so be specific.
Well, basically, I guess at the meeting, it was decided that it wasn't really going to go any further unless a group of faculty were going to get together and discuss procedure. I guess that's kind of Brian.
I read the minutes and I'm glad that you guys talked to me about me when I'm not here, but holy cow. Welcome back. What did I do?
No, he's just training the new faculty.
I'm not even, I just volunteered to train them. There's nothing in writing that says I am. And I
No,
still will volunteer to do that, but I put it out
No,
there
but I'm
as if.
teasing. It's really the procedure and the point and the point of it and the dates that some people wanted to discuss further.
There's some discussion about whether or not, should this be something that we continue to put back on the agenda for a big Senate-wide discussion, or if we should start a task force, do something more informal, like what I think what happened with that one bylaw that got lost and then found and lost and found, where they had sort of a working group, but I don't think it was an official task force. Point being that right now we've been asked specifically to change, the division directors asked for changes to the bylaws regarding FPAR. We could consider that or not.
Well, okay.
But there is a long discussion about FPARs, and now the question is,
What
what do we do next? And I don't know that it feels terribly meaningful just to keep talking about it here unless there's a kind of a smaller working group that does more.
So I have a question, because, so the division directors they answered the questions that were posed to them. And they made comments. But did they really tell us how to change our bylaws? Was
No,
that
right.
very clear? They made some suggestions where things were not, in their opinion, clear or could be improved. But, and then we had our discussion, and we came up with some of those points. But I thought we were then supposed to go back to our faculty and get some more input, which I'm sure a lot of us did, to bring it back to a fuller discussion. Because it seemed like it didn't go anywhere,
Right.
right? We just aired differences of viewpoints. So can one of our responses be our bylaws are okay? Or can we say, okay, we could strike something, but I'm just kind of confused on what are we reacting to?
Well, there are two things, right? There is the information and feedback from the division directors, which included a request for a formal process of feedback.
From the division director.
From the division directors. There's also the sort of items of discussion from the faculty personnel committee, which brought up things for us to consider, such as timing, such as training, what the meaning and purpose of, whether the bylaws could be clarified to better state the purpose of the FBAR. But I would still, I'm happy to put 30 minutes on the schedule to talk about it in here, but I have a feeling it might just be a lot of us staring at each other. I kind of feel like there might need to be more work done outside of the room before we come back together, is my thought. But I'm happy to schedule it. If people just want to come and talk about it, we can do that.
Well, I think the danger of scheduling 30 minutes is that it is a vague topic. And from my recollection, there was a couple things teased out from the discussion when the director's here. One is, what was the purpose and
Why did you do them?
what are we doing? That would have to be one discussion in and of itself. And then the other one is any type of post-tenure review.
Yeah,
That was separate. And then the third one I remember is the expectations of post-tenure review. So I mean, if we're just looking at the FPARs, I think if we were to devote 30 minutes, it would be strictly for what is the meaning and purpose of FPARs? And then will our bylaws change based on our interpretation of what is the meaning and purpose of bylaws? But if we were to do 30 minutes, I would say that it has to be direct. Hence probably why you're asking possibly for something outside.
I mean, I think it would be helpful if, you know, the simple fact is I have zero room on my plate to put anything else right now, and the advisory council is pretty slammed for the rest of the term, I think. So it would be helpful if a group of faculty put their heads together and said, all right, here's everything that's been brought to us about these issues. Here are some main points. Here are some things that we need to consider, that kind of thing.
So, I think what Brian said is good, because there were really two issues. It was the FPAR, the specifics of them, the timing thing that could be worked out pretty easily, right? Timing, I think. And then the directors wanted a request for formal feedback, but I thought we determined they do give feedback.
They give feedback, but they're not required to.
They're not required, and some of them don't do it.
We could codify it if we wanted to.
Yeah, and then the big thing was, though, was post-tenure review. That was a separate topic. So I don't think we should squish it together. But I agree that maybe it'd be more effective to do it outside this body and have a task force, but can't only the provost and the Canadian Kimball?
No, we can create task forces.
We can ourselves create a task force? We have that power?
Mhm.
Oh, cool.
We've made one this year.
I know, I'm trying one.
Okay, so, maybe it was illegal. No,
It is
so,
illegal, right?
so, yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable. But there would be two separate task forces. Those are two separate.
Post-tenure review task
Isn't that
force
correct?
and an FPAR task force.
So I don't have much experience with subcommittees or task force or anything, and so I wouldn't want to head it, but I would totally volunteer to participate in the FPAR one, since I am the one that doesn't currently like the timing, and so therefore I want to change it, so I'll participate. But I don't want to be in charge, just saying. I'd like to experience it with somebody else being in charge the very first time.
Well, how about this, how about we, I will put together something for our next Senate meeting, hopefully if the schedule allows, to look at what a charge for two different task force might look like. Come back to that.
Then you might vaguely remember that note that came out about accreditation where shared governance was slashed and all
I
that.
don't
Well,
remember it.
it wasn't exactly like that apparently. There's something called the eligibility, I can't pronounce that, eligibility requirements to even be considered for accreditation, and those actually include the things that were taken out. It was apparently redundant, although sometimes it's nice to have redundancy for certain things, but that's the reasoning behind taking those out, and so they are present in the document. And one thing that's really important for all of us to know is that our administration had absolutely nothing to do with that. Jody was at the meeting where this was revealed, and she was absolutely shocked by what she heard, and she wasn't the only one. And our administration really wants to make clear to the board that that we do support shared governance, and that it is important to have qualified administrators. And so that led also to the letter that you probably read that Sue wrote, and explaining certain things. And so that's one thing.
Sue also mentioned that she is, as chair of Provost Council, going to bring up the revised changes as well and suggest a response from the Provost Council, because she also thought that I can't remember if she said that was specifically about academic freedom or academic freedom and shared governance, but But she also thought the changes were not correct, I think, and not handled well, and was pending on a response from Provost
So
Townsend.
who actually came up with those changes? That was unclear to me.
That, the accreditation organization.
The organization came up with them and
Is it the
then what was-
NWCCU? Is that
Yes.
what it is? Yeah, NWCCU.
And then what did they do with them? They came up with them all on their own?
They rolled them out in a meeting in January that Jody was at. I think it was January or February.
I think February.
And one of the things that Jody talked about, and Jody will be here later, and she said we can come back to this if we want to and ask her a few more questions, but she did acknowledge that she wished that she had brought the changes directly to me in the Senate, but she didn't because she kind of didn't really even notice the academic freedom and shared governance part because there were other things in there that were alarming that had even more direct impact to how we do curriculum here, and so that was sort of her freak out on that. I don't know if she'd appreciate freak
Well,
out.
just as an indication that the new standards really show more of a preference for financial results than academic. I'm not expressing myself well, but you know what I mean. They're focusing more on the financial versus the academic and sustainability and so forth.
And don't really take into account the university's unique mission, this sort of dictating to universities what they should.
What's their role? I mean, as accreditors?
Well, we don't do.
No, I mean, I know what they do when they come to accreditation. I get that, but what is their overarching responsibility to the schools in which they go to review for accreditation? Is it to tell schools that you have to be financially making a boatload of money off of your programs?
Well, there's a
Or
whole
is it
new-
the quality of the education of that institution?
Jody made it kind of clear that, like, that they were feeling a lot of, that the accreditors themselves were feeling a lot of pressure from the Department of Ed. So this is something coming from like very high that's like trickling down. And it was raised that, you know, these are the kinds of things the head is looking at, and so why would the accreditors also be looking at that? Like maybe it's different, you know, maybe they shouldn't be looking at that, but there wasn't, I didn't get a strong feeling that that institutions could push back really hard on some of that stuff, because this was coming from the Department of Ed.
Wow.
I mean, I hope everyone saw the follow-up that, that thank you, Donna Lane shared, another day. That Donna Lane shared, in which we have been extended, the deadline has been extended, we have more time to write responses, and I encourage faculty to do so if you have feelings or thoughts about this, and that they are pulling back from some of the stances that they were moving towards, and that there will be another public comment period with these new revisions that are going to be coming forward. So none of what we were unhappy about is written in stone, but I do think you should be watching this more closely than we had been.
And what's the new deadline? Is it
The 15th?
the 15th of this?
Yeah,
It was the 12th.
Monday,
Oh,
No, that was just, but
a week from
But-
today.
Donna said that a letter was already sent to them.
Donna sent a letter on behalf of IFS.
right.
But if individual faculty feel they want to write letters, they can do
So
so.
Senate can't send a letter?
We could, I think probably to do that, we would need to pass something, and I don't think we can pass something by Monday. I mean,
Yeah.
to officially represent everyone's view, I think we
Right.
could discuss it.
I want to say something else too. I wouldn't be a good representative of my program if I didn't say that, you know, there were a lot of things that were originally in the accreditation sort of package that were about the library that are all gone. It's been, almost everything related to the library is gone, which has provoked a lot of concern from our whole consortium of 38 academic libraries in the Pacific Northwest. They've written a letter to the accreditors about this. They feel that the things they took out shouldn't have been taken out, or that maybe a new standard needs to be written that would, you know, basically advocate for information literacy and things like that, and have it be about more than simply having a collection, which is pretty much the way it reads now. It's just you have to have a collection, but we wanted it to say something a lot more about being more integrated with curriculum and all kinds of stuff like that. the accreditors weren't really interested in hearing from consortia. So they want to hear more from individual institutions. And so that didn't go very far.
I feel like this is one of those situations where my ordinary instinct in Senate is, yes, let's honor our 2-week rule and everything. This is so important that I'm wondering if we could pass a motion to authorize our chair with the approval of the advisory council to send a letter. Because I don't think our concerns are all going to be all that controversial about this. It's a lot of the changes we don't like, and then I don't mind if we throw in a few of those, the sort of particular problems with the current standards, but we clearly don't like the gutting of academic freedom, the gutting of any mention of shared governance. I mean, even if it was that, here's a bullet list of things we have concerns. And, I guess what our real ask would probably be is an more extended comment period so that more feedback can be obtained. That's really what, to me, be the meat of a letter that we would write, even, but I'm wondering, I'm looking at our advisory council, would you be open to such a motion? I will make it.
Well, I can say for myself, just because of the unique timing of this particular week, I'm a program with the film festival, and so from Thursday morning through Sunday night, I am gone.
Yeah.
I'm at the festival full time.
Mm-hmm.
So writing, and I'm also working towards the announcement of the new major on Thursday. I probably don't have time to write a letter. I'd happily sign my name as Senate Chair to a letter that represents the Senate's views. I did send a letter when it was revealed that that the deadline extension was only for University of Oregon. I did send an angry letter about that, and then the follow-up came up that it was for everyone. And
So, I'm actually willing to help write the letter. I'm just not, I'm only a senator. But, I would like us to say something, even if we have just real concerns about, in a fairly 30,000 foot level. Some of the changes they've actually made are bad, and some of the changes they should have made they didn't make, and they should slow the process down and get more feedback. That could be the message. You could say it in about 5 sentences, I think. I don't know how much we want to go through group editing. That can be painful. So that's why I was trying to figure out what motion to. But I would like it to be from our Senate chair, because even if it's not technically a motion passed by the Senate, I think that carries some weight. So if you're open to me ghosting a letter that you guys look over,
I don't know if we need an official motion or if just no objection.
I still have a question.
I will
So
do it.
even with what Kimball is suggesting, it does not prevent individuals from still
Absolutely not.
commenting.
Yeah, right.
Which maybe we should make a point of letting all faculty know that again. Because I think it got lost in a very long
Chain of email.
Over spring break too, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it started over spring break, so that maybe just putting that out,
Right.
if you wouldn't
Yeah, I'd be
mind
happy
just
to-
putting it out and saying this deadline has been extended, and we would encourage you, if you have issues, to make a comment directly to that address.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
That would be really helpful, because I think a lot of faculty need to be reminded.
Watch me out. Finish up too.
Do we want to bring Jody up to speed
Anyone
on this?
have
Let's keep
specific
her in the
questions?
dark.
No.
Was that all on our list? Did we get there? We were just talking about the NWCCU discussion, and so it has been agreed upon that Kimball will write a letter that I will sign, representing sort of some of the Senate's concerns. But I don't know if there's any specific other thing that we did talk about.
One thing, since Jody's here, a question we all had was, where are we with the process and how likely do we have any chance of affecting it?
Well, the process has already been affected by faculty feedback. They've added the standard back in, referring to academic freedom. In terms of, well, that was an easy win for them, because academic freedom is already considered and is measured as an eligibility requirement for accreditation. So they neither lost nor gained anything by either removing it or putting it back in. So, it was, it was a political move. The bigger concern for me, and I've said this publicly and I'll continue to say it, is not the aspects of the standards that they've altered. They've made fairly significant changes to the standards. Most of what they've removed is addressed elsewhere, with some exceptions, and those have been, and I encourage folks to really step up and speak out to those. And again, I think shared governance, I don't know that in general, an accreditor can measure shared governance, and the ways that we are called upon to demonstrate that have never been particularly robust, but certainly that's something to note as well. Bigger concerns have to do with the alteration to the general approach to accreditation that NWCCU is proposing and not bringing forward for public comment nor for any impact. And that to me is a little bit concerning. So Kimball, to get back to your question, I think there's a lot of opportunity to have impact. I suspect that they're hearing from a number of their member institutions, and I suspect they're hearing fairly frequently and enthusiastically. We still have 2 more comment periods. This one closes, and then it goes to sort of internal redrafting, and then it goes out for another comment period. So there's additional discussion. A question that they haven't answered yet that came up at the advisory council last week was whether or not the entire commission votes, meaning who comprises the commission. I believe it's the presidents of the institutions. So there's still a fair amount of conversation to have about this. So, and I'm happy to talk more and provide whatever information I can. I got a lot.
And I think you said that the second public comment period will be in the middle of the summer, right?
Yeah, it will. And then, and this is on a sort of a rapid train, because the second comment period is the middle of the summer. The training on the new standards is September to October. And most of us will be reporting at some point. We, and incidentally, this is a good opportunity for me to announce this, we'll also be having a peer visit in October from NWCCU, because we are currently preparing our mid-cycle evaluation, so it'll be, and they have nothing to do with what the commission is doing. That'll be folks from other institutions. So there's gonna be a lot going on.
Do you need to move forward if there's no?
Well,
if
there's just, well, should I maybe not mention that? It's another little, yeah.
Well, just quickly is that I did immediately after the ratification of the bargaining agreement, I reached out to Sue and Linda asking for information for how requests for service loading and how much service loading and who gets to decide, all that kind of stuff related to the Senate and its committees. Sue has followed up on that with a tentative invitation, but no time schedule yet, to advisory council to meet with her and Linda about how we're gonna figure that out. So she is asking for faculty input on how the administration is going to be handling that. Stand by. We will let you know what we know when we know it.
And so I'm going to have to hold on with the committee on committees to send out invitations for committees until we figure out whether some people are not included in the invitation.
That's sort of time sensitive.
I know.
We're in spring.
It is. I will say that as part of that discussion, I had asked Sue if we would be having a, because the letter of agreement I think had that Sue will convene a task force, and I asked if that would be something that would have like a summer stipend attached to it, make sure that we can nail this out. And she said, this would possibly wait till fall. So some of this may not be fully resolved, and the timing that some.
Well, how are we supposed to elect who's kind of do that?
And committee members,
Well,
other
I'm
committees.
just thinking here first and
Yeah.
then committee second.
I think if people want to run, they can put their names forward, and then we'll have to figure out what happens with what kind of loading will be offered.
It's probably better if we get people around, because then we'll have to deal.
Right. We unfortunately the timing of the Sister City thing was not helpful, because Sue was hoping for us to meet with her today or tomorrow, and it's just finding time for us to get together did not work out. So I don't think Sue's dragging her feet on trying to nail that out,
But clearly nothing's been thought through yet. She's meeting with the president and a couple of BAC people to discuss it.
So, there are two parts to this. One is really time sensitive and one isn't that time sensitive. The one that really isn't that time sensitive is the one I think you're asking about summer stipends, and that is how do we change the bylaws to be in alignment with the CBA?
right.
Because people aren't going to be applying for promotion to senior instructor 1 or 2 until, you know, end of fall. So we have a little bit of time on that one. What we don't have time on is what we're talking about, is the loading people will get for service activities. And we've got to do something.
Yeah, my hope is that we can have some kind of understanding in place by next time. That's my goal. And that's, you know, that's, Melissa is focused on getting the chairs elections done, so it's probably, the timing will probably line up, it's gonna be close. Hopefully we'll have something. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Lee, did you want to say anything?
If you'd like me to, Andrew and I and yourself, we had a little bit of an exchange as to what's happening in undergraduate studies, since our faculty are professional track faculty. So in our faculty loading for next year, if faculty are currently sitting on a Senate committee or plan to put forward their name for a Senate committee, there was a placement holder of 1 ELU. It doesn't mean that anything was decided or that's going to be enough or it's going to be too much. It was an opportunity for us to not overload them to the point where there was no wiggle room whatsoever in their 45 ELU, bringing down the 1 for the program and then 1 for Senate committee if they in fact indicated they wanted to stay on the committee they're serving on or have planned to put their name forward for a committee. So right now that's what we're doing in an effort of preserving our faculty and their shared governance.
All right, quickly, I would like to ask, would anyone like to make a motion on waiving the 2-week rule for the Carpenter One grants?
So moved.
Second.
Wait, slow down.
Charles?
I imagine there's no.
Made the motion and Brian seconded to waive the 2-week rule. Any further discussion of waiving the 2-week rule for the Carpenter One grant? All those in favor of waiving 2-week rule for Carpenter grants, please indicate so by raising your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes. Would anyone like to make a motion on approving the Carpenter One grant proposals?
I move we approve all Carpenter One grants.
Carol makes the motion, Lori seconds. Any further discussion?
I'm available for discussion.
Actually, I did have a discussion. Why do we always have to waive the 2-week rule for carpenter grants? Because we always have a time crunch?
No, I think it's that faculty who are making travel plans and things like that like to hear the information as soon as possible.
Okay, so it's not related, because we do it every year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
I mean, I think it's just customary that there's not a real feeling that people need to go back and discuss their,
right.
it's just, I think,
I'm just curious.
consideration for the faculty who are getting their awards.
Yes, okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the award suggestion? Please indicate so by raising your hand.
So if you're getting one, you should.
Yeah, if you get one, if you're getting one, you should. Thank you. Any opposed to the approval? All those abstaining? That round. All right, thank you. Motion passes. All right, next up we have a proposed clarification on university studies integrations rule. So this isn't a bylaw, it's not academic policy, it's sort of a way that the curriculum is interpreted, particularly by DegreeWorks. So Lee, do you want to say a couple words about that?
Sure. So Katrina reached out to me a little bit ago and she said, you know, we're running into a problem. We reached out to DegreeWorks and they told us the problem's us. So the way it states this on our university studies page is it says integration, which is HI and J, that 2 of the courses could be taken from the major, but 1 must be taken outside the major. Now, DegreeWorks is interpreting the major as here are my core major requirements, where I believe that when we go back a few years that the intent was the prefix, not the major. And so what we're asking for, and it was voted on in university studies, is that we go back to the original intent, which was the belief of the committee as well, that we would base it on prefix, not major. So this way, folks who have certificates or minors or other things, that they're not searching up and down for these majors and holding up graduation completions because the computer's confused.
Any questions about that? This one was somewhat time sensitive in the sense that the sooner it is resolved, the less of a headache it will be for a lot of people. So if there is a motion to waive the 2-week rule, we will entertain it.
So moved.
Brian seconds. Any further discussion on the waiving of the 2-week rule for this? All right, all those in favor of waiving the 2-week rule, please indicate so by raising your hand. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 2-week rule is waived. Motion to approve the change to this policy.
I'll move to approve it.
So can I get clarification on to approve the policy to just base it on prefix? Is that what you're recommending?
Yes, and I don't even consider it a policy. I
It's not.
consider it a language update.
Language update,
Yes.
so it's not.
Not a policy, I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'm
That
just
was my
confused.
imprecise language. So we have, Anna has made the motion. Do we have a second? Lori seconds. Any further discussion or questions about what exactly we're doing? All right, all those in favor, please indicate so by raising your hand.
Large door, small.
All right, thank you. All those opposed? Any abstentions? That's just me. All right, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, the next thing that came up is that this actually came from Janet of the board, asking for a vote to reappoint Lori Rutsbury to the foundation board. Apparently the Senate appoints the faculty representative to the foundation board, and there's a one-year term. And so Lori is done with that 1 year, but would like to return to the position. If there's anyone feels like we should seek out open nominations or anything, we can do that, but she wants to keep serving. And
Oh, gosh, somebody wants to keep serving?
It's kind of nice to have a continuity, at least for 2
Yeah.
years.
So 1 year is really short.
By any chance, do you know, is there any term limit to it, or is it just the rule that they just have to be?
I'm not even sure where this
Where
is
is this
specified.
language about the,
Maybe is there a foundation board bylaws? Would that be where?
There might be a board policy.
we don't know it.
No.
We can give her 1 more year.
We can give her another year while we figure it out.
Where it is.
Are we gonna create a task force to figure
Are you offering
Fast
to?
forward to Google the foundation bylaws.
So moved, Andrew.
All right, so Charles has made a motion to approve Lori Rutsbury for the foundation board. Lori has seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of reappointing Lori Rutsbury to the
I don't even
foundation board?
understand if we have the authority to reappoint. I don't really understand. I'm sorry, but I'm just lost. If this is a foundation board move, what are we voting on?
The Senate, I was told by Janet that the Senate appoints the faculty representative on the foundation board.
Okay.
Per the foundation board guidelines.
Per their guidance, okay. I'm just confused. Everybody else is clear.
Does anyone remember doing this last year?
No, I don't remember ever doing that. Do you remember?
We're starting a lot of voting, like the bylaws say.
All right, well.
We have a motion.
I approve.
We have a second. Is there any further discussion?
Well, that's all we need. Brian,
Get it off.
All those in favor? I'll find out if it's legal later.
That's the next zoning.
Yeah, it's a record.
All those opposed? Carol?
Because I don't know what I'm voting on.
That's fair.
Sorry.
All those abstaining.
That's good.
Mark and I are abstaining.
We always abstain.
Yeah, abstain. All right, well, the motion passes, but we'll do some searching later. All right, next up, new academic policy regarding catalog year for post-bac students. So, Dave, would you like to say a few words about this policy?
Sure. When an individual graduates with an undergraduate degree and they want to come back and do post-bac work, their catalog year does not stay with when they got their original bachelor's degree. It goes to whatever year that they come back to finish up or to start their post-bac work. Because if somebody started their undergrad 15 years ago, many of the courses might not even be in existence, or lots of things could have changed. And rather than trying to hold fast to a really old contract, when a person comes back into a new post-bac position or application, that's when their catalog starts. So it was just clarifying that piece, that whenever somebody comes back, it's like they're coming here for the first time, and so
So it starts over.
it starts over. Yeah.
This has always been the practice, it just hasn't been codified?
I don't know if it's always been the
It hasn't.
practice,
Okay.
but we're just trying to clarify that concept now.
Yeah, it catches a lot of folks out, so I think that it has not been applied either consistently or always.
So it just spells it out more clearly.
Is this just for post-bac, or is it for people that take like a 7-year break and then come back as well?
No, this is for once a person graduates,
They already have
they have a degree from
awarded.
SOU,
Post-bac.
and they want to do
Back
post-bac.
one.
When they come back, that's when their catalog would start, is when they come back, as a post-bac, versus somebody just takes a break
Go back.
It takes a long time.
and then comes back. That's a different scenario, so.
Any other questions? So this is not a rush thing, so I mean, we have, take it back to your program.
Sure.
Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
All right, next up we have new curriculum committee proposals. And these did come out a little late. They were put in the drive on Friday. So hopefully people had a chance to take a look at them, but Larry is here to answer questions.
Yes, you had a lot of reading to do.
Thanks, Larry.
I had more to read, I don't believe you. Any questions or concerns? And hopefully, if
So
you,
this was that big pile that started with,
yeah, this is pretty much going back to January, about
right,
9
it was huge.
meetings. Yeah, it was gigantic.
Are you trying to confuse us?
I have some content experts here, so if you guys just have questions, I'll be pointing to the content experts.
Can you?
And so this is just open for discussion today.
Okay.
Hopefully you'll be voting on it in 2 weeks. Well, if you think of something later, pass it along.
Any questions or concerns from anyone?
Are there more than normal? There seemed to be a ton.
Well, tell me about it. I'm on the committee. It takes me 3 hours just to cover the material before each
Yeah.
meeting. But there's a lot, yeah.
There's a lot of really
There's
nice.
a lot of new courses.
Well, I was hoping it reflected the fact that we have in the last few years gotten some new faculty.
Yeah, that
Some
has
of
something to do with
those
it.
are new courses, and some are reflect their expertise.
Yep, there's a lot of that going on too.
Okay.
Also, isn't it, I mean, we have had in the past some very large packages, but it usually, in the past, they also come very late in the year. So I have asked Patrick to send stuff, along the way, so that we're not approving everything at the end. That's a little bit happened last year where we had just so many things at the very end. So no questions for about any specific courses? All right. Well then, we will come back to that in 2 weeks. Next, we have the online MBA and online business certificate.
Wait, before you move on, does this include these new proposals, the certificate in sustainability?
Yeah.
Business, yeah. Sustainable tourism.
Yes. That was all part of the same
I mean, I don't like 2 minutes.
What's that?
I mean, what do we do?
Yeah, I was just wondering if she wanted.
I mean, how do I know what neurophysiology is?
I don't have.
No, you could ask. Like why do you?
I'm not sure I have
I
any.
just assume that.
No questions?
But usually people in programs, don't they give us a little.
I mean, the material's there, we read it if you want.
And they should be here again, correct?
Is that?
The expert people in those disciplines should be present next time. So if we had a question, we could ask them questions. Yeah.
But let's be fair, I mean, we're obviously usually trusting our curriculum committee
Right.
to do a pretty careful vetting of all this stuff. And if we have questions, we should get our questions maybe to Andrew. Let's
Before.
not invite them all here.
And then ask
let's-
questions.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
definitely very helpful to hear ahead of time, so, you know, it's, if you can, if you have questions by, you know, next advisory council, which is Monday afternoon, that's preferable, that way I can make sure that I can let faculty know that they really need to be here to answer a question, or sometimes they can give the answer,
Okay.
to all faculty, or to all the senators beforehand.
The only question, I mean, were there any major issues when looking at the
'Cause you can see
myriad of classes that
Yeah.
come through? I mean, as a big
Well,
picture?
quite often what'll happen is that concerns we have, we give to them and then they fix it and come back.
And the
so
ones
that
that
by-
they fixed are the ones
Yeah.
that are now.
And so
passed.
once it's fixed, then we,
And you can see the approval of your committee on each item. It says how they voted.
yeah. And plus all the minutes are available too on that Senate website.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, the minutes, and I think we may have gotten out of the habit of having minutes be available or just sort of checking them. This has come up in grad council as well with some of the curriculum changes that have happened there. Folks wanna know, you know, what we sort of worked through before they got there. So, we can, I don't know if they seem like they're accessible, but we can certainly do something to make them more available or more timely when a large group of things come forward like this.
I know that, I mean, Larry, you can, I don't know if this is still in the practice, but when I was chair of curriculum committee, there was never a single thing passed that wasn't unanimously passed.
And that's how, it's still that way.
If there were concerns, we just didn't take a vote, we sent it back to them and
And
asked
so
them.
what we see is what you said.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
really unanimous, yeah.
It usually really means that everyone there felt really good about it. All right, we will come back to that in 2 weeks. So that does bring us now to the, again, we've been asking programs that have been approved to come back and tell us a little bit about how they're doing. I do want to sort of state for the record here that there's a little bit of a communication script on my end. After this presentation, we are going to be voting on some graduate curriculum proposals. But there are some changes to the online MBA that didn't get into the materials that came forward at our last meeting. So we'll discuss those after this or during this. You can ask questions about those. They're being introduced today, but they won't be, that part won't be voted on until next week, unfortunately. That was next one of my section. All right.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Well, thanks for inviting us here today to give you an update on the online MBA. I think it was just a little bit over a year ago today when we introduced, you guys, at least the Senate, helped us fast track the introduction of the online MBA to start in spring of 2018. So tonight, hopefully we have some great information to share with the body here. So let me start by showing you this graph talking about the accepted versus decided numbers. So this is over, when we started in spring of 2018. So you see here in this graph comparison of how many students were accepted into the program term by term, and then how many of those that were accepted started in the program. So you see here that we kind of lumped together the summer 2018 because we have 2 sessions in summer. So if we look at the total number of admits over this period, we had about 190 of them. So if you added all those numbers in blue, that would be the 190. So this is the number of students that our partners, the academic partnership, has recruited for us over this period. And on average, they were able to recruit 31 students over this spring to spring 18 to spring 2019. Of those that were admitted, of those 190 admitted, 174 actually registered, okay? Which translates into a 92% conversion. So which is pretty high. If you look at our the rate of success, I think in our undergrad, this one is much higher than that. So these are the yield rate on the, in terms of comparing the number of students that were admitted versus the number of students that matriculated. You can look, you can see that it ranges between 84% to 87%. Now something that's a little bit, there's a little bit, sort of an anomalous number here, especially in fall of 2018, where the yield rate is over those that were admitted. And that's because many, some of our evening students that were previously admitted from prior terms transferred to the online program. So this kind of gives us a little bit of a, that in our evening program, there's some cannibalization going on, which is not surprising to us. There are students that are local students that, because of work and personal situation, that they prefer the online programs. Carol.
So I don't know what your yield rate really is.
Oh, that's the number of students of those that were admitted. How many of them?
They actually came.
Correct.
But I thought I heard you say something about, so this doesn't show us anything about the completion because the program takes 16 months, correct?
Yeah, we haven't, when we started in the spring of 2018.
Right, so you're not there yet.
Not there yet. So of this 27 that actually were admitted in spring 2018, I think about 9 of them are graduating at the end of summer.
So
Because
my other comment is that you have a lot of new senators here that might not understand that this is an academic partnership and it's separate from that evening online thing. So I don't know if any of them care that it's different, but why is it different? So maybe you could say that. I don't know.
Well, curriculum-wise, they're the same because they take the same number of core and then required electives. But in terms of the difference comes in the form of, I think, tuition, because the online here is a little bit, I think $60 cheaper per credit than our regular online. And then the other difference is that there's a sharing of revenue. AP, our partners, they do the heavy lifting in terms of recruiting students, and then also play a significant part in retention. Whereas SOU, our program, we deliver the course. So we do the teaching, developing the courses. But as far as getting the students here, they do it. They do the calling.
Tell the people what the profit splitting is, because that was the
Yeah, we split the revenue, the tuition 50-50.
And it's for a 10-year period, correct?
The contract is for a 10-year period and renewable. If either party is not satisfied with the partnership, either one can get out of the deal.
You
Yes.
just mentioned the word retention. Do you have numbers about how many students go from the first course to the second course?
Correct. Yeah, it's running around between 80 and 90%. So if you look at the total number of students that started, total, I think we have about 124. And then the program is really designed so that students who really have busy work life and home life, that they can start and stop at any time. We are a carousel system such that if a student stops for one term, when they go back the following term, they really don't miss much in terms of program completion time. If a student, for a student who wants to do the program completely in the fastest amount of time, it's a 16-month program. Most students, however, take 1 or 2 classes a term, so it'll take them 2 years. Yes, Joyce.
So, Renee, with respect to the partnership itself that you
Uh-huh.
guys have, is that 190 total admits over that time frame acceptable to both of you as partners?
It is. I mean, acceptable in terms of what, Charles? You can quantify this in sort of financial term.
Well, I mean, you have the agreement.
Right.
And they're trying to deliver X number.
Correct.
And that X number is okay.
We forecasted about 25 starts a term, it's like 25.4, so we're right on. We'd like to see that go up a little bit to 30 or 35 a term. But right, for that first year, we're exactly at the 25 per term start. 5 terms a year, that's the other big difference. It's 5 starts a year, and that's why it's easier for them to drop it and drop out. So right now, we're on track.
You'd like to see it go up a
Like
little bit.
to see it go up because of one of the reasons is we have new concentrations coming through.
Right.
And so, we're a little worried about spreading the elective classes.
Right,
But-
right. And you and the partner both kind of on board for this, that needs to come up just a little bit.
Right, yeah, we've had those conversations.
All right? Yes?
Are those 174, are those unique individuals?
Yes,
Or
correct.
if they take 2 courses in one?
No, it's unique individual. Unique. All right, so the next slide here. So the question is of, student demographics. Where are these students coming from? It's about 2 out of 3 are from Oregon, which is expected. We were expecting this to first, the strategy would be to attract students from Oregon, and then hopefully over the next few years we'll expand our market beyond Oregon. Of these students that are from Oregon, so here's where they're coming from. 50% are from Southern Oregon. The Jackson, Josephine County, Klamath area. And then 30% are from the Portland metropolitan area. So at this time, many of our students in the program are actually alums of SOU. And it's good because they are familiar with the system, they are familiar with the programs, they're familiar with the faculty members. So again, eventually we're going to, once this market is tapped out, and AP is going to expand beyond the Oregon, the state of Oregon. In terms of gender and age distribution, most students are, more female than male students. And then in terms of age, 30 to 39 is the largest age group. And then in terms of beyond 30, they comprise 75% of the students in the program. Which tells us that many of our, or most of our students in the program are, the working group, which is really our intended target. All right, so just kind of give you an idea of the enrollment numbers the first full academic year. So we divide our classes into core. There are 10 core classes, so the core classes are in that box. And then we have electives, 10 elective courses currently. And then with the proposal we're submitting to the Senate, which was approved by the Graduate Council, the addition of the healthcare administration concentration. There will be 2 additional courses that will be added. So if you look at the maximum enrollment, the courses that are offered once a year These are courses that don't have any prerequisites, so students can take them when they're offered. You see that the numbers are really large. The maximum class size actually is 100. Actually, it can go beyond 100. But these classes are big. You say, hey, you know what? How can you have a quality course if you have a class size of, in this case, Marketing 512, which is the second time it's offered this term. It has 89 students. So how do you maintain the rigor and quality of the class? Well, we have an instructor for the course, and then that instructor is assisted by what we call as coaches. And coaches are not graduate assistants. Our coaches are professionals. They're professionals in their field, or some of them have actually, they have PhDs in their field. So they help the instructor in whether grading papers or managing discussion boards. And it really the assignment of work really depends upon the arrangement between the instructor and the coaches. Carol?
So the coaches are not from this institution, is that correct?
Correct.
I understand
Yeah.
is they're in Texas or wherever.
Yeah, they're with another partner in Instructional Connections. So they're also paid.
They're paid by whom?
Well, we pay to Instructional Connections per student. We pay.
And then the Instructional Connections pays coach, so it's a third party.
Okay, so that's kind of cool in some ways because we have bigger classes than 89 that we actually have in-house on the campus. And we don't get any coaches, but that is something.
But you can.
I
think we're also thinking about that in our
decided to sponsor.
We're actually thinking about that in our undergraduate program, right?
We haven't done
A
it.
director?
But I know a question that came up at advisory council last year whenever this was brought forward was, are those coaches not also being, you said some have PhDs, so it raised the question by our president to ask that organization, what are they called, academic partnerships, to make sure those people weren't being sort of abused in their role. So they're really qualified people, but they're paid minimally. So do you know the answer to that question? Are these coaches paid?
Well, I don't know how much
for
they
their
are paid by
qualifications?
Instructional Connections, but I would think that, these people are professionals, that they would know that whether they are underpaid or not.
We pay the coach, or we pay that.
Instructional Connections.
$50 per student per class. 46
And
per
we
student
don't,
per
not all
class.
of them, but some of the faculty that have smaller classes, like some of our electives are smaller,
Yeah.
they're not getting coaches. But yeah, when you have 90
It's-
people in the class.
It is up to the instructor, the lead instructor of the class, to either have a coach or not. I'm teaching one of the classes this term. I have about 21 students, and I elected not to have a coach.
You could have with that number?
I'm sorry?
You could have had a coach with just one?
I could have, because we agreed that you can have a coach even if you have one student.
Oh.
But I figured, the amount of
We
work.
gotta revisit that. We
Well,
weren't expecting a small class.
Right. So, if you have over 25, then it's probably best if you have a coach.
Yeah, Renee, I don't think you answered my question.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't answer it because you don't know what academic partnerships is paying the coaches
Well,
that helping those classes that you designate you need a coach for.
Let me clarify that. Academic partnership has nothing, is not the one that provides the coach. It's the Instructional Connections, which is another, another organization.
Yes.
And so the other question is, we don't, I do not know how much they are.
We're paying them $4,000 for the coach for that class.
What?
Well, 90 people, right?
Well, I mean, they're paid per student.
We're paying somebody $4,000. I'm not sure how much the coach gets.
Do they have coaches for others, for all subjects?
Well, yeah, we can.
I mean, like, are there chemistry coaches that can help me?
Yeah, for,
Well, you
I'd
don't
have to
My
check
class
with
has-
You
them.
don't get to use them, you have to be part of this academic partnership. That's what's not
I
clear.
don't think about it, yeah, I don't think that's true, because instructional connections is not part of the academic partnerships. The instructional connections, they just provide coaching service.
No, okay, but I don't think faculty from here and other departments can say, I'm gonna go to this instructional thing and I'm gonna ask for a coach and there's, like, who would pay that?
Do you want, we can check that for you, if that's a question.
I think
I
Carol's
think
right.
they could.
I don't think anybody can just willy-nilly say, I need to hire an assistant. with
I've been
class.
doing this for the last 5 years, I've been hiring, 5, 6 coaches for 170 students. So I think this is an arrangement.
It's
Kate,
a
right,
whole
between-
arrangement that we made with
Yes.
this whole piece when we started this off.
Right, so, yeah, so, no, you don't get to.
Yeah, but they're not getting extra loading, it's just,
Right.
getting loaded like a regular graduate course.
Right.
And we're not getting loaded for like 5 graduate courses.
Right. So how-
Okay, so we,
Can I
Oh,
ask
sure,
one more
sure.
question? How many faculty in business are participating in teaching some of these classes for academic partnership?
a majority of the courses that are taught are business faculty.
No, how many faculty is that? I don't have a,
How many,
I don't know how many you have and I don't know.
Yeah,
how many-
yeah.
Probably easier to say, because there's very few who are.
probably 10, I'd say
I'd say at
10.
least 10 out of,
Yeah. Some have multiple courses that they teach, like Sarah, one of our accountant faculty members, she teaches 2.
So a majority of
So-
the faculty, how many faculty are in business? I don't know.
15, 16, I think.
something like that.
Tenure track, just faculty, just
Sure.
Well,
total.
we have professional track teaching in this
Okay.
too.
Okay, and then about 10 of those 16 are involved in this, so.
I mean, that's a very rough.
I think we have only 2 adjuncts, Peter Armstead and John Cady. Everybody is
Yeah.
business faculty. Yes?
Yeah, we're not making anybody.
So, out of all these students, SOU gets half of the tuition.
Yeah.
The other half goes to academic partnerships. And then who flips the bill for instructional connections? Is it academic partnerships or does SOU?
We do.
So then, out of the 50% per student for tuition, if there's coaches, that comes off of that too.
They pay, what, $50 per student?
46.
46 per
So
student.
it's less.
So there was no MBA online SOU only program before academic
No.
partnerships?
We have the evening only.
What was the issue with just creating SOUs on, I'm late to the party
Yeah.
as a first year
Well, I don't
senator,
think
but
we
what
could
was
have
wrong with just creating an SOU online
That
program?
many students.
Pardon, we couldn't have recruited, but I thought we only recruited like 30 students, academic partnership only recruited 30 students is what
Per
I thought.
term, per
Per
term.
term.
And
Well,
five
evening,
terms.
we're able to recruit, on average, about 20 students.
I mean,
1
190
year.
starts in 1
A
year.
year.
It's not bad. Yeah,
Year.
this, we didn't, it was honestly a top-down effort, but we
Yeah.
kind of got on board and we're okay with it. I think mostly everybody's fine with it in business, we kind of appreciate it because, it's something out there about it.
I'm sorry?
I
Oh, Melissa, I'm sorry.
To get back a little bit to the instructors teaching these
Uh-huh.
classes, so these are 7-week terms, right?
Correct.
And so they run kind of at the same time with the regular 11-week terms, right?
Oh, well, yeah, 3 terms they do, but summer,
Right, summer's a little bit different, but so I'm just wondering, how is that working if someone's teaching these classes and the 11th, is that creating any
It's a little
confusion
bit,
or?
right.
I just
They're
heard you say,
dynamic.
yay, I'm done with one of my classes, because, they generally start at the same time and are done at the end of the 7th week. So no one seemed to have a problem.
no, like I taught a research class in the fall, and it was a great thing because I was done the 7th
Yeah.
week. Then I can concentrate on my other classes, the remaining 3 or 4.
So we haven't heard, no one's come back and said this is a problem.
I was just wondering if you've ever asked the partner that you're splitting the tuition with to split the cost of those other, has that ever been a conversation, like, 20/80 or something, because you are utilizing them, and so I feel like you're really losing financially compared to them in the 50/50.
Well, they do, they spend quite a bit on marketing and everything, and they actually have a part-time staff person, several, just for SAU.
Oh, okay.
And so they hire a local recruiter here, were they gonna hire one up in Portland?
So they put other costs.
They put lots of.
They do the
They do
heavier
all the
lifting.
They do a lot
That's
of
correct.
the expenses.
All right, so,
Wish we could keep all the revenue.
so these are our sort of targets for these classes. Once per year courses expected to have about 100 to 140 students per class. And then those classes that are offered twice per year, 50 to 70. And then the classes that are offered four per year. Because, why do we have all these four? Frequently offered courses because these classes have prerequisites. So they have, the prerequisites are those classes that are offered twice per year. And then the electives obviously are offered maybe three times.
This is their model.
Yeah.
Like AP, we're not obviously their only clients. They have to.
But is it unique to our school? I mean, do we have any other programs like this at our school?
Not yet.
Well, soon to come, I think. Something is approved, or I don't know if that has been approved, but
This seems to be a
I'm
sign
getting
of
ahead
the
of
future.
myself here.
Huh? This is a scary signing.
Yeah.
Oh. So,
Jody, you want to?
Well, I'm shooting Dennis Jablonski some very meaningful, I'm wondering if he wants to comment, but education is now working with AP
Yes,
as well.
we're working, we're in the planning phases, maybe the final planning phases.
And some of the grad council curriculum proposals that will be coming forward would be specifically intended to facilitate the implementation of an online Master of Science in Education.
Carol?
okay. I shouldn't have heard that last part. But, so when they originally came to us, they wanted education and business. And education said no at that time, so now you're rethinking it. But my understanding was, and I could be very wrong, so correct me, Katie, if you know differently, that this academic partnership, for them to invest in a school and their time and effort, they need more programs to work with. So the logic is to push for more of these types of partnerships with more graduate level courses and programs on campus. But it's sort of, and I say it's a little bit scary because it's sort of like what's driving it and where does that make your school end up? Like more faculty teaching online versus teaching our current students, because not every department has 15 faculty on, obviously. So, I don't know, Dennis, if you can
Yeah, well,
speak to the
this will probably
fact-
come to the Senate shortly, but we held out
I know.
because we were not, we couldn't do the same model as business. We have very complex moving parts to our constituents that are already there,
Right.
throughout Southern Oregon and Oregon. So we couldn't do the same model. So we've been working on making it more appropriate to what, fit into what we're currently doing in the department now. It's probably more complicated than, I know it's more complicated than the MBA, which was already like sort of a set piece of, we have to fold in the current people that are in our program, the endorsement areas, the licensure part, and there's just so many things.
But you're still moving in that direction.
Yes.
And why?
Because our MED program is already all online.
Okay.
And it's really been a life support for a couple of decades, really.
So it's to kind of boost that program.
Absolutely. I mean, the numbers are just way beyond what we are able to recruit. The reason why we had a master's program to begin with, not the MAT, but the MED to begin with, was to provide a service to all the teachers that wanted a master's degree when they got only a license in a fifth-year program, the way SOU was originally set up to give licensure.
Right.
They didn't get a master's degree, they just got a fifth-year certification. So we've been offering a master's degree for, well, since 1999, in order to help those teachers get a higher pay and higher degree. And it hasn't been a huge number of people. We try to market it, we try to push it out there throughout the region, but we don't have the numbers. We haven't had.
So this kind of program would help with that particular master's program?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
For marketing purposes?
Yes.
But you're not talking about it for all your master's level?
No, we only have one.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not for the MAT.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not for the teaching license. Yeah. It's for more of the adult learners that are, you know, we're targeting with our strategic goals and just broadening the offerings, because it's going to have several concentrations and it's going to be much more robust.
So we are eating into our time, so I'd like to get back to the MBA.
Okay, so I just have one last slide to show here. Kind of really getting down to the, you know, one of the more important things that, you know, why do we have this kind of program? And, you know, obviously it's to help improve our SAH, because increased SAH means more revenue for us, right? So this one just kind of shows you where the online MBA in relation to our other current MBA sections, the number of seats, but more importantly, it really talks about what, in terms of our overall School of Business SAH portfolio, how big is this online MBA now contributing to our SAH? And you can see that, you know, we're not even, you know, we haven't reached our max level yet. Of course, we're still increasing the number of students. So by next year, this next academic year, we'll probably have reached our maximum, you know, number of students per course. So we're now at 16% of our SAH contributed by the online MBA program. Yes.
So how does this fit into the larger view of how we're evaluated as a university in terms of how well we serve our students and, you know, the retention of our students? Are these considered, that's why I'm kind of confused, because these are students from all over the place, but they really are students when they're here,
They're
right?
all our students.
So do these numbers factor in positively then, would you say, to our, you know, to the model that we're now under? It's about how many students you graduate, even in graduate programs, is that true?
I would think so. Yes. Because we have a higher retention rate in this program compared to our, you know.
Well, kind of, I would say that's kind of early to say.
It is, but you know, the numbers not. And then we'll also have a chance to evaluate the quality of at least the program.
Well, would the same criteria then apply if you're going to expand? Because right now you have mainly Oregon students in this program, predominantly Southern Oregon, some Portland. And so the idea for their program was to reach more broadly, but we're actually docked if we graduate people from out of state versus in state.
Well, by then we will
You know what
have.
I'm saying, Jody?
I do, but I think,
Is this separate or something? Is this?
no, I think, what I assume you're referring to is SSCM, which is the revenue model that, so we don't really get docked for anything. Every student that we graduate
Is beneficial.
absolutely, and graduate students are, you know, good for us, good for the institution, good for the students, good for the program. So I think what I'm hearing you say is that is there a limited return on the investment because we're seeing the potential that more students are going to be recruited from out of state. I don't know that docked is the way to look at it. I think that they are, and this is gross, they're less lucrative than the students in state.
Right.
But they're ultimately students and they're SCH and absolutely they don't count less really in terms of our overall institutional health. And their tuition revenue, and it's good tuition revenue. You know, I think the other observation I want to make, and this is more qualitative, I guess, is that in both programs, significant, really close examination of curriculum took place and a lot of internal processes. So I think institutionally, it's beneficial both in terms of bottom line as well as just sort of strengthening some key aspects of the institution.
Yeah, I think the key question on tuition and to the root of what you're both talking about, I'm asking this question. do the out-of-state students pay an out-of-state tuition and the in-state tuitions pay an in-state tuition?
No, there's a locked-in tuition rate for these students.
And it's, is it,
19,163. I don't know, I remember seeing the numbers, I'm sorry.
what is it?
I thought that's what I saw on there.
Right now it's the
They're
same, I
documented.
think, as our graduate tuition.
She was-
We had locked it in for a
document.
while, we aren't moving it as much, so we can advertise. And it was locked until January, and then in January we upped it to match our regular online grade, right? Yep.
So why do your evening MBA students get through in one academic year?
Well, some of them are full-time, they take 4 classes.
Oh, okay, so that was the difference.
Yeah.
These are primarily part-time.
These are, I would say, probably 90+%
Okay.
working adults, and that's another benefit, is we've added accessibility to the MBA program, and I know last year we had a lot of issues about rigor and things, but I think things going pretty well in those courses. Students are pretty happy, we have a lot of good feedback from the students.
So we do have to move on because we have courses up for approval and also new courses that do need to be, new changes that do need to be introduced so that they can be voted on at a future meeting. Some of those are MBA related. So can we have some questions about the current the proposals in front of us? We also have some people here from Grad Council to address any questions folks might have about the proposals from Graduate Council.
Well, there's not really,
Yeah.
so, and I don't know, that we have some folks here from the programs that are represented, so if there are questions, I'm gonna do my best to answer them.
I'm on grad council and we went through all these and we approved the
Yeah, these are the ones that were up for change.
Yeah.
So again, today we have up for, they were introduced in spring term. I asked for anyone to send me questions and no one did. So we do have courses from education, English, foreign language, environmental education, and business and communication, all of which we could
Actually,
make a motion.
I did have a question for environmental education, and when my colleague was in here, but he didn't correct it.
What was the question?
He just had some courses that weren't on there. I mean, it's not a big deal, but he never corrected it, so it's.
Seriously, look at what it's doing.
It's ready to get the dog.
You keep going. Okay, so,
Environmental education.
yeah, he just didn't add some courses in. Is that a big deal? I mean, I don't want to, I'm not going to stop the process, but
And in the summary, are you talking about?
when he lists all the available courses for the graduate students, it's inaccurate.
So the catalog copy is wrong?
Yeah, it's incomplete, and I
Missing
told
language.
him, and I thought he would correct it, and I'm sorry, but
Okay.
what I saw again was the same thing that was originally presented.
Carol, who did you tell?
Stuart James, who is the current director of the EE program.
He was here last time.
Correct.
Right.
So I'm just pointing it out, but.
Jody, is for catalog language, is that something that
We could.
is a concern for faculty?
Sure, I mean, we could, and this would really be your decision about whether or not somebody would want to make a motion to vote on the changes as they're presented
With the
with the
caveat.
catalog corrections, and if somebody wanted to second that, and then if everybody
Okay.
wanted to vote, that might pass. If anybody, I think
Yeah.
if you are not comfortable with what substantively is represented in those changes, then I would urge you to
No, it wasn't.
lead the
was
conversation in that
incomplete.
direction.
It was incomplete.
So it should be an easy fix.
Yeah,
Okay.
it should have been.
All right.
I agree.
Would you like to make that motion?
Sure. I move we approve the graduate council proposal changes with the caveat that my colleague, Dr. James, will make the correction to the EE catalog copy. Is that good?
Lori seconds. Any further discussion on these are the proposals brought forward when we last met in the spring? Any other discussion on those? All those in favor of approving those proposals, please indicate so by raising your hand. Unanimous. So any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. And then we do have some new proposals to consider, including, since we do have the MBA folks here with us, this was supposed to go forward and that includes the new concentration. So I imagine there might be some questions about that.
Anyone want to ask questions, Mark?
These concentrations at small classes, isn't this just gonna make small classes even smaller by rearranging the deck chairs?
This is a conversation we've already had. I personally, and this is one of the reasons why I have been pressuring AP that we need more than 25 people a term. I like to see it closer to 30, 35. I've had more conversations with Phyllis, and she has reminded me that even if some of our elective classes are smaller, we have to remember they're also taking 10 other classes and bringing that piece up. So that's a piece I'm struggling with because, yeah, some of our concentration classes, our accounting class last term had 16 people in it. So we had a class with 16 people, yeah.
Are the concentrations your idea, SOU's idea, or are they dictated by the external?
We had them in our regular.
We have an HCA in the undergrad, so we're just making that available in the graduate program so that also eventually our evening students will have ability to take those classes. So it's, for the benefit for all.
They obviously want us to have concentrations online because, as they like to say, it brings the whole vote up. And they've shown some data to that effect, that when you add new concentrations, you get new students. They may not be in those concentrations, but it's in there. But I kind of want to wrap it up with this, is it 5 concentrations in color day?
Are they kind of standardized? Do they kind of impose those on all their partners, or is
Well, I think it's different. Here we're going to healthcare because obviously there's a big need for healthcare in this area. So I actually think us doing the healthcare in the MBA is a really good idea, and I do think it's going to bring them up. Finance, I'm not so sure, but we'll find out. But we already had a finance concentration, and the way we do our concentrations are 3 classes. What we try to do is we try to have one class that overlaps like 2 concentrations. So in the MIS piece, we have a GIS in business, and that also counts in marketing. And then we also, analytics might count in a different one. So we pretty much have 2 classes, even though there are 3, we've got them all worked out, except for accounting. We only have to add 2 classes to add a whole nother concentration. And then they get offered about every 4 terms, they do the offer. So of these 2 classes, you're only adding 2 more sections a year, which yes, might be smaller anymore.
But I like the angle that it helps recruit.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of was saying I don't want any more. and then they kind of kept convincing me that the more concentrations, the more people we have overall. And yes, one class we only have 15, but that meant that you have 15 more in those 10 other classes. Okay, that makes sense. So that's kind of where we are with all.
So you were worried about the dilution effect?
I was on our elective classes,
Right.
but I've actually mellowed out about it. It made sense. It sort of makes sense to me. So
Any other questions about the?
we didn't have a chance to talk about our wine certificate. Did you? Was
Okay.
that? We can
I
just
think we'll have
say
to
it's on track.
Invite you back in.
Okay.
Gotta get a little crammed at the end.
Okay.
No, this isn't for voting, this is for next. There are also changes in there, of course, for education communication. If anyone has questions that are pressing, please do reach out and we'll make sure those questions get answered before the meeting, or at least answers are prepared for the meeting so that we can get those approved next time. Is there any new announcements or business?
Just quick announcement. Last week we hosted the Oregon Outdoor Alliance in the Outdoor Leadership Department. We had about 25 people from the local grant of the Valley here, and 25 organizations that represent the outdoor industry. And we had about 45 of our students there, and we had a great intermeshing of the two, with lots of practical experiences and jobs coming out of that, so it was really fun.
I was going to say that the elections committee ran an election. We only had 1 opening on the faculty personnel committee, and it was in, I never know what letters to use, but 8 people. You ordered it. And Jerry McCain was unanimously elected. He wasn't opposed either, but so he will have, he's taking the New York out this week. So everybody else is continuing on faculty personnel committee for next year.
Jenny?
I've been asked to remind you all that the McNair spring nomination process has just opened. We had a little bit of trouble recruiting last term, and we actually ended up with a really great cohort. But Dee wanted me to remind you, and as always, if you're not sure if a student is eligible, just send them there anyway. They're living in the Mountain House where the Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies, well, it wasn't even GSWS back then, it was, right. and now where the faculty writing group is, but they're over there. And she would really love it if we had way more applicants than we can possibly manage, and a really large McNair group coming in for it.
Deadline?
I don't know.
Oh,
It's
Other
soon.
announcements or business?
Maybe. Sorry, I'll send it to you.
Jody,
It's
who is that? Who's in charge of that?
Dee Southard. He's the director of the McNair Borough. I think it's the first week of May for opening.
okay, thank you.
Sorry about that.
And I'll close this out with the announcement that the digital cinema major is on the HEC as a consent agenda item on Thursday, and so you'll be seeing lots of promotion of that. So thank you all. Adjourned.
Go Texas Tech. No.
Oh, you got an hour.